everyone, and welcome to this session of Getting Started with Covidence's Data Extraction 2 tool. My name is Julie Brown. I'm a community manager at Covidence based in Auckland, New Zealand, and I'm joined today by my colleague Tenba Grota, who's also a community manager based in the Philippines, and Temba's just going to work in the background answering some of the questions that might appear during this session. So a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. Today's session is being run in standard webinar mode, so all webinar attendees are going to be muted. However, you can ask questions to us at any time by entering them in the questions box, and we'll do our best to answer those during this session. If we don't have time to answer your questions before the session ends, then we'll follow up with an email to you directly. The session's recorded and you'll receive a recording of the webinar by email, usually within about 24 hours of the session ending. So before we jump in, I'm just going to provide a little bit of contextual information about Covidence for anyone who's here that hasn't already used the platform. So Covidence was created by and for the research community, and it's basically designed to streamline the review process from importing your references through screening, data extraction and risk of bias assessment, quality assessment. And the platform allows review teams to significantly reduce the amount of time that they spend on reviews, which means that you're able to produce high quality evidence faster. We have a full-time team that's based around the world, and they continuously work on improving the product and providing technical support to our global user community. Covidence is entirely cloud-based, so there's nothing to download. And we support the world's largest review community, and we now have over 300,000 users around the world. So before we begin, I'm just going to pause the presentation, and I'm just going to use a poll to find out about how confident you feel about setting up data extraction and quality assessment in Covidence. So not at all confident, somewhat confident, or very confident. Just 1 or 2 more seconds there. So almost done. So I can see that 83% of you are not at all confident about setting up data extraction and quality assessment, and 17% of you are somewhat confident. So you're in the right place. Hopefully this webinar will give you the information to make you feel that bit more confident about setting up these templates. Okay, so I'm going to close that and come back to the presentation. Right, I'll just move on now. So the focus of the session today is on data extraction mainly, and I'll briefly cover risk of bias as well. So what is data extraction? So it's the process of collecting relevant information from studies and organizing that in a way that's going to enable you to analyze and synthesize the information or to create a summary, depending on the type of review that you're doing. To do that, you're going to need to use a form, and it's a really good idea to develop this at an early stage in the review process. So many review teams are going to include a sample data extraction form as part of their protocol. And this is good practice because designing the form really belongs to those early stages of planning your review and should be done ahead of extraction itself. And by creating your form ahead of time, you reduce a number of different biases within the review process. Why do you need a form? Well, it's a way to collect the information that you need, and only the information that you need, and to do that in a standardized way. And it should prevent the need for you to go back to source documents over and over again. So Covidence helps you to create a logical and well-structured form for your data collection. And you can use a template that's available and customize that to your requirements, really. Or if you prefer, you can start from scratch with your own data extraction form. So that kind of flexibility means that the form achieves optimal fit with the data that's going to be captured. And there is no best way to build a data extraction form. It really depends on the type of review and the type of data and the specific outcomes of interest for your specific review. And all of that information should be housed within your protocol if you've got one. But basically, whether you have a protocol or not, we can use the following 5 steps in order to create our extraction form. So planning, so you should develop your form at an early stage. Piloting, once you've got a few included studies, you can try out the form and adjust it as needed until you're happy. You don't have to wait until you've screened all of the studies in data extraction, in data screening, study screening. You can create your form ahead of time. Extracting data, you might need to make some changes once extraction's underway, and that's fine. It's really difficult to get data extraction right first time. Comparing or checking data is the next step, and that means that you look at the data that's been extracted by 2 reviewers, or you check the data that's been extracted by 1 reviewer, and you end up with the final data that you're then going to export in a format that's suited to your next steps. So just go through those in a little bit more detail, and then I'm going to go to a review and kind of do a live demo for you. So the starting point for designing a data extraction form is going to be your review question. And say, like I say over and over again, if you have one, it's going to be part of your research plan or your protocol. So to maximize your data extraction, the form's got to be really well structured. It's got to be easy to use. If items are unclear, then there's going to be a risk that the people doing the data extraction are going to make mistakes as they use it, and you're going to end up with numerous conflicts that have to be resolved at the end. So designing a really good data extraction template takes practice, and it takes a bit of time. It's not something that you can snap your fingers and create instantly. But we can use a framework to guide the form. So a commonly used framework in clinical medicine or for intervention reviews is referred to as PICO. So that stands for population or participants, intervention, comparison, comparator, and outcomes. Now, in observational studies, some of you may be working on reviews with observational studies, then we can replace the I in PICO with an E for exposure. But the framework is basically the same. So for the purpose of this webinar, we're building a data extraction template from a protocol that's assessing the effectiveness of vitamin C for preventing and treating the common cold. Here you can see that the population or the participants that we're going to be interested in are all participants, whether they're adults or children, and we're looking for them to have been involved in randomized controlled trials. Next is the intervention. This is the treatment that you're going to be investigating. And in this review, we're looking at the effectiveness of the intake of vitamin C, at least 1,000 milligrams daily. Now, in an observational review setting, then my exposure rather than my intervention column might include things like exposure to different noise levels in an occupational setting, or in the instance of a common cold, it might be exposure to siblings with a common cold already. So it's a little bit different between different types of reviews, but creating this nice PICO table really helps create that kind of structure and framework to help us create the data extraction table. So the comparison, or sometimes the comparator or control, people use different terminology. If you decide to use a comparator, you can pop it into this column. So this, in our review, then it's going to be the placebo. So we're going to be comparing the vitamin C, at least 1,000 milligrams daily, with placebo. So again, some reviews aren't going to have a comparator. You might be looking at single arm studies. You might just be looking at one particular exposure without a comparator. So again, you have to adjust your table to your specific review. Outcomes. These are the measures that are used to assess the effectiveness of treatment or intervention, or a measure of your exposure. It's particularly important to select outcomes that matter to end users of the review. And in this example, the outcomes that we've selected are the number of colds, so incidence, the duration of the cold, and the severity. And once again, all of this should already have been decided before you get to the data extraction template phase. The next step is to kind of test drive your form on a number of studies and make sure that it works as intended. So if the test data comes back how you expected it to, then the form is performing really well. If some of the test data is a bit wide of the mark, you've got a useful opportunity to explore the reasons for this and to kind of improve the data extraction form. So some of the questions you might ask, if the form is not really working the way you expected it to, you might want to ask, is the form that I've designed capturing everything I need? Is it capturing data that I don't need? Because that may be a kind of a waste of everyone's time in extracting that information. Are there any questions in the form that are potentially confusing or open to interpretation, so that different data extractors are extracting different information? And this testing phase, you can repeat that over and over until the team's satisfied and that the form is fit for purpose. So we want to make sure that it's right early on. When we get to data extraction, it's also important to kind of give a little bit of training to individual reviewers at the pilot stage, and that's particularly important for junior reviewers who might not have the same experience. And that can continue throughout the process to make sure that everyone understands exactly what information needs to be extracted. So Covidence, in Covidence rather, we can change the data extraction form and make changes to it at any time. So you're not kind of locked in right at the beginning having to get it right. You can change at any time during the data extraction process. If you do make changes to studies that are in progress or already in consensus, then they get returned back to like an incomplete list so that the new data can be added. And if you make changes that delete a particular field, that's going to be deleted from all of the included studies whether there's data in there or not. It's just something to be aware of, and I'll cover that off again a little bit later. So with the form ready to go, you're now ready to transfer the data from the study reports into the review itself. And when I go through the demo, I'll show you how to do that. So although the specifics are going to be a little bit different with each review, you are likely to be extracting data on those specific aspects of the study. So the participants, the interventions or exposure, the comparisons, and the outcomes. So within Covidence, we allow this kind of comparison or checking and consensus to be reached. So data can be compared by two reviewers, and we'll see that in the demo as well. So we can resolve any discrepancies between data extractors. Like here, you can see decisions are required. People have put in different numbers. And so it's good practice to kind of, as part of the process of data extraction, to think who's going to resolve conflicts and how that's going to be done, and just to keep a record of that process itself. Once you've kind of reached that consensus stage, you've got final data, it's time to kind of parcel up that consensus data itself and download it from Covidence. So from extraction 2, once you've completed extracting the data, you can export a CSV file from the export option. And that can then be imported into any statistical package. So the CSV file will be compatible with statistical packages like Stata or R, SPSS, or simply into Excel. If you've extracted data that's qualitative, then you can import that through the CSV file into programs like NVivo. You've got various options for extracting, and I'll go through those again when we get to the demo stage in a bit more detail. So what I'm going to do now is to go to a live demo for you. Just going to swap screens. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just walk through the extraction process itself based on the information that we've just seen in the slides. So this is a review that's ongoing in Covidence. So it's the same kind of topic, vitamin C for the common cold. And the last stage after we've done our importing references and our various screening is data extraction. So by the time we get to this stage, we typically have a lot fewer studies than we started with. And I'm going to click on this continue button. Once this opens, what you see on the left of the screen are the studies that are available that we've selected for inclusion. We want to start data extraction on. And on the right, you can see the status of the extraction. So when we first import references, they're going to look like this. This button is here because there's a template available. So when you first come to this page, you won't see any buttons there at all. So there's a separate template creation step in extraction 2. You won't be able to start extracting data until you've created and published either your data extraction template or your quality template or both. The first time you come to this page, these two buttons are going to be dark blue, like the extraction button here. And then once you've published the template, they become white. So I can see that these templates have already been published in this review. So I'm going to start by going to the data extraction template, and you can create the template at any point in your review. You don't have to have studies already in data extraction to be able to create the template. So this is a basic template that's built into the Covidence system, and it's completely customizable by you. So here we have these lines here refer to fields, okay? And we can add new fields as we go along by clicking on the plus icon, and that will add a new section underneath. So the options that we have in Covidence are that you can add a heading, subheading, text field, single choice checklist, a multiple choice checklist, or a customizable table. So right at the beginning here, you can see we've got a heading field, and on the right you can see the preview. For any changes that you make here in the template creator, then you can see the preview on the right. So the template gives you a heading for general information, and then we've added in, or the template has their information that you might want about the lead author, the institution. H2 refers to a subheading, so this is a subheading on study information, and then I've got some checklists for the country in which the study was conducted. So to add these kind of checklists, click on the button, add a single choice checklist, and then I can give it a title and start adding options. If I don't want this particular field, I can simply click delete. Within the template that we provide, you can make as many changes as you like. So here we've given you a few countries in which the study might have been conducted. And you can add as many more as you want to the list. So I might want to add New Zealand. I might want to add Taiwan, for example, and so on. As you make changes here, they appear in the preview, so you can see exactly what you've done. Again, if you decide you don't want a particular item that's in the list, you can simply remove it. The green buttons here refer to like free text fields. So if I want to add that kind of information, I can add a text field, give it a title, and it'll appear here. So I might want to put department of lead author, for example. So that's the heading, and then I've got the free text field underneath. So this can be used for short text or long text. It doesn't matter, you know, how much information you put in here when you get to the data extraction phase. So again, if I didn't want to add that, I can click on it, press delete. So the template itself gives you some more information here about the characteristics of the included studies. All of this is pre-populated for you, and as I said, you can use it, you can remove it. If you want to start from scratch, you don't want to use our template at all, you can use the I want to start from scratch link here, and this will remove the whole template that we provide, and you're able to start yourself using these headings and text fields and checkboxes and customizable tables. So if we move down, we've got information on start dates, funding. Now I'm going to get to the participants section. So this is going back to my PICO framework. So I have a header for participants, and then I've got some text fields in here for sample size, population description, so I can copy and paste information over about that, inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. Now you'll see up here, for each box that I check, I can provide instructions to extractors. So if you remember me saying that it's really important that everybody's kind of on the same page when they're data extracting. And if something's a bit complicated or you need to guide someone to where you think the data might be, then we can add that information in. So you can see I've actually done it here in this table. So this is a customizable table that I've added in to this specific review because I wanted to capture some information about the baseline characteristics of the participants in my study. And so what I've done here is given my extractors some instructions. So I've said capture baseline population characteristics, look at demographic tables in the publication. It might be that for inclusion criteria, you want to direct your data extractors to look at the methods section, for example. So it really depends how experienced people are and how much guidance is needed. But I'm just going to show you how to create a customizable table because these are really useful components. And within extraction 2, of course, you can use extraction 2 for any type of review. So it's not just about intervention reviews. Extraction 2 is really useful if you're looking at reviews of observational studies, if you're doing a scoping review, a narrative review, or a qualitative review. They can all be done within this framework using the tools that we have in terms of free text and tables and checklists. So to create a table, I'm going to click on the Add New Item, click on the table, so you can see now I have a new table, and you can see the preview here. So I've got columns and rows that I need to give headers to. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to replicate the one above just to make it a little bit easier. So in my new table, I'm going to give my columns a heading. So I'm going to add vitamin C, and I'm going to add placebo. And then my row headings, just going to add the first couple of items. So I'm going to add mean age and the units that I want. And then I'm going to add male and percentage. So those appear exactly as I've asked them to do in the table preview here. If I want to add another column, I can add another column, and that's going to appear here. I can delete those columns. So if you see they appear in the preview, I can delete them. And the same with rows. If I want a new row, I can add a new row, or I can delete a row. If I decide I don't want this table, I can delete the table. Okay. The other nice thing about the template itself is that you can move things around. So if I wanted to describe, and in my participants, I wanted the population description to come first, I can move that around, or I can move it back here. As you start to plan data extraction, you realize that the order of items that appear in the manuscript itself that you're looking at often help guide you as to the order that you want your data extraction form to be created in. So it might be that sample size always comes first in a manuscript before the inclusion and exclusion criteria. It might be that it's much easier for me to fill in the inclusion exclusion criteria first and then locate the information about the sample size. So it's just, I guess that just emphasizes how modifiable this is and adaptable the template is that we provide for you. So after I've added in information about my population, the next bit in the kind of the PICO format that we were using was to look at interventions. So here I've got a header. So I added that header by putting in heading. That created that, and you can see that's here, interventions. I've got a free text box, so that text field, so that I can put in some information about the study arms. And then you can add in some customizable tables that are about the study itself. So you can add whatever you want in here. So you create your table. So again, you've got column headings, rows, and depending on your data, it doesn't matter which way round these go. It's whatever feels easiest for you. It's often easier to have column headings for your interventions or your exposure of interest, and then the rows being the separate pieces of information that you want to extract. So more information in this case about the dose of interest or the frequency, for example. So once I've got the information that I want to capture about my intervention or my exposure, then I want to know about outcomes. So here I've got primary and secondary outcomes. I'm just going to scroll down so that you can see those. Here we go. So those are text fields. So the data extractor will be able to write the information in there. Now, when it comes to extracting data, it can be done in all different formats. And I'm just going to briefly show those to you in some examples, just to show the variety of ways that you can set up tables. So we can have tables that have characteristics about the incidence of disease. For in this example, we've got a number of different pieces of information that we could collect about disease severity, for example, what scale might have been used, which measurement unit was used. I can also capture data at different time points. So here I'm capturing event data about my common cold, and I'm collecting data at 8 weeks and 12 weeks. So these are events out of the total population. So these are my column headings. This time my row headings are going to be my intervention and control. So when I scroll down to look at what that table looks like, you can see I've got my intervention and control, and now I've got the data I want to capture. So the number of colds, the total number of people. Can also capture data looking at summary statistics. So you may want to capture relative risk, confidence intervals. So you can set up your tables like this, or you could look at the duration of the cold, how long it lasted, mean number of days, and standard deviations. So for that, we've got our column headings, and for the duration, we've got the column headings being our intervention and control, and the mean and standard deviation. Now, I might want to capture other data. So I might want to capture some qualitative data. So I might want to put in a free text field about experiences of cold sufferers. So that's going to give my data extractors a free text box. I'm just going to scroll down so you can see it. So here we are. So when they do the data extraction, that's what they're going to see, and they'll be able to put that information in. Another way of capturing data will be to use a multiple checkbox. So I might want to put symptoms of cold and then provide some examples. So I might have sore throat, runny nose, sneeze, cough, for example. I can also use this little box over here to add the other option in. So if we look down at what that looks like in the preview, this time you can see that we've got square boxes rather than round boxes, and this means you can click on multiple boxes. So multiple people might have more than one symptom. And because I clicked to the other option, I've got a free text box that automatically appears, so you don't have to add that in yourself. So you can edit this template as many times as you like. As I said, you can move things around, you can add things, you can delete items, and you don't have to do it all at once. So there's no pressure to kind of sit down and create a template in a day. You can save as draft, you can save as many times as you like, and then once you're ready to publish, click on the publish button, and that will make the template visible to the rest of the team, and you will be able to start data extracting. So if once you've published your template, you come back and make changes. As I mentioned when we were looking at the slides, this is where if you make a change, you've already extracted data, that study is going to come back into the data extraction list, so that you can add the additional information. If you delete a field, it will be deleted from all of the studies that you have in the included section for data extraction. So any of those that do have data in them, data will be removed. So that was the data extraction template. You can also briefly look at the quality assessment template. So in Covidence, we use the Cochrane Risk of Bias 1 tool. You can start from scratch if you want to. So if you're doing a particular study review that doesn't include randomized trials, and you want to use the Newcastle Ottawa scale, for example, for observational studies, or the Quadrus 2 tool if you're looking at diagnostic test accuracy, or the CASP, which is Critical Appraisal Skills Program for qualitative studies. You can manually enter those in here. So you can delete our template, pop your own one in, and proceed. So again, you can save as draft as you go along, and when you're ready to publish your quality template, you can publish. Not all reviews will need quality assessment, so don't feel that you have to create a template that might not be used. Once you've set up your template, you're ready to go. So going back to this blue button here, this tells me that the template's ready, I can begin extraction. Once I click on this, I can see my PDF on the left and the template that I've just created on the right. So I can copy and paste information across from here to here, whichever information you want to take across. I can swap between my quality assessment and data extraction templates. Again, doesn't all have to be done in one sitting. You save, you can come back to this data extraction form. Only when you're sure that you've extracted all the information that you wanted, then you can send it off for consensus. We've just improved the PDF viewing in Covidence. So now you can fit PDFs to your screen. You can zoom in and out as you need to. If you've got a table, you can now flip the document around to see the table in the right view. And you can search the document itself for specific words. So Once you've sent that document off to consensus, so you've filled it all in, you're sure that all the data is correct for your data extraction. The next step is to move to consensus. So let's click on this button. So this time we see the data that's been extracted by reviewer 1 and reviewer 2, and we want to make a final decision now. This is the final data that we're going to export. So whoever's doing this final step needs to make a decision. So if there are any conflicts, they appear in purple, and the person making the final decision can select one or other of reviewer 1 or 2's options, or they can put in something themselves which they believe to be the correct answer there. So just click on it and it automatically moves over for you. Again, you don't have to complete consensus all in one go. You can save as you go along, and once you're sure that everything's been resolved, you can click on complete, and that study will automatically then be ready for exporting the data. So that view of consensus is only in dual reviewer mode. So as I mentioned, some reviews don't require 2 data extractors. So if you're doing a scoping review or a narrative review or a qualitative review, maybe you don't need 2 people to perform all the data extraction. The nice thing about data extraction 2 is it's flexible. So you can go back to your review settings and change the number of reviewers to 1, and you can do single reviewer data extraction. For that, you obviously don't do consensus, but the system will ask you to check your own data to make sure that it's all complete before you go ahead and export. The other thing that you can do when you're in data extraction is you can continue adding tags if you want to. Once extraction's underway, you can manage reviewers. So if you need to change a reviewer, I can make Temba the second reviewer here. Excuse me, I can either let him continue on the data extraction form I was using, or I can clear the form and he can start with a blank form. In data extraction, you can also merge studies. So this is important when we have multiple publications from the same study. So we might have an abstract and a full text paper. We might have an interim paper and a full text paper, but they're only reporting on a single study. So we want to pull those together. To do that, we click on the studies that are reporting on the same. That activates the merge button. I select a study that I believe is the primary study, so that might be the study that reports the full data. Those studies then get merged, so they just have one ID number now. If I've made a mistake, I didn't mean to merge those, I can use this Unmerge Studies button. Just get a warning to say things are going to be restored to the way they were before. And the studies will go back to their original ID numbers. So once I've finished all my data extraction quality assessment, I'm ready to export. So go back to my export function button. Data extraction. So the default is to export in a CSV format the final data, that kind of first column where we made the final decision. And that can go into your statistical package or into Excel spreadsheet, for example. There are also a number of different options, so we can export quality assessment, final data only, or we can export the basically it's like those 3 columns. So I can export my final data plus the data that was extracted by reviewer 1 and the data that was extracted by reviewer 2. So there are numerous options, but as I said, the default option is to export the data extraction final data that will appear in an Excel, in a CSV format. So that's kind of a tour of setting up your data extraction form and the importance of thinking ahead of time about exactly what it is that you want to extract. I'm just going to ask you to complete another poll just to see, now I've gone through those steps, how confident do you feel now about setting up data extraction? So not at all confident, somewhat confident, or very confident. So just give a moment or two for people to click on the button. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of a change. This is probably the hardest part of doing a review. So the kind of selection of studies is the easiest part. But whatever format you use, whether you use our tool or take the extraction out into another tool, this is the hardest part, getting this right. Okay, so everyone who has voted has now said that they're feeling somewhat confident. So we've definitely seen a change in the poll there, which is wonderful. And I'm just going to go back to my main screen one more time, just to point out to you guys that on every page of the Covidence platform, there's this little option here about need help. Now from here, you can email us directly at the support team with any questions. It also allows you to go directly to our knowledge base. And in the knowledge base, we have a specific section on data extraction too. So here, there are lots of really good articles about different parts of the process. Some of these contain videos that you can watch that help you go through each step in your own time. There are also lots of frequently asked questions that you can refer to as well. You can also access that from the little help button at the top here, the question mark. You can go directly to the knowledge base page, and also allows you to register for any upcoming webinars that we might have as well. So I'm just going to give everyone a moment or two to think if they have any questions that they want to ask. It doesn't look as though we had any questions during the session. You're probably all too busy concentrating on what was being demonstrated. It's quite a lot to take in. I realise that, especially if you're not familiar with the platform. But I think because you'll receive the webinar, you'll be able to go through it in your own time, basically, and go back over things. Some very positive feedback. Thank you, Michaela. Okay, so someone's asked about what the CSV looks like. So hopefully we've got some data in this file. I'm just going to bring this over for you. So this particular export just has one study in it, but this is what the CSV file will look like. So it just goes through all of the information that you had set up in the template, column by column, and once data extraction's been completed, then each of these will be filled out. So you can sort by these. If you're using Excel, you can sort by them. You can do your own kind of statistics and means and averages and such. So mean age in years, you can calculate columns in that in whatever program you export to. But this will be populated, and it will be populated with the Covidence ID number, the unique ID number, and the study ID there as well. Tables, so there's just a question about tables. So unfortunately at the moment, Covidence doesn't export tables as such. You would have to do that through another program to get the content that you want. Got a few minutes if anyone else has any other questions. Or comments. There's something that you want me to just go over one more time in the few minutes that we have left? Something that wasn't clear? No? Okay, well, if you do come up with a question later on today or tomorrow, then please contact us at the support team, and we'll be able to answer those questions for you or point you in the direction of a knowledge base page that might be useful. So thank you very much for your time and attention today, and good luck with your reviews. Thank you very much.